All slaves are free. Did you hear what I said? All slaves are free. I know you heard me that time. And before too long, everyone is going to hear those words, because they've been a long time coming. My name is Samuel Williams, and though I am now a free man, my life was not always my own. I was born a slave in Tennessee, to slave parents. I grew up without an education, without a father, and without the freedom to define my own destiny. Until the war came. A war that was being fought, it seems, for different reasons, depending on who you talk to. Many in the North thought it was to preserve the Union. My former owner believed it was being fought for the freedom to enslave others. My mother, bless her, believed that it was not only to bring freedom to everyone, but specifically to her baby boy. In my second year of the war, so it did. The Yankees came, my master heroically ran away, and I found myself for the first time with something that I had never had. Choice. The choice to do what I pleased, when I pleased, as I pleased. Just as my mama had always prayed I would. Now, what I did with that choice didn't exactly please her. I had heard the words of a fellow named Douglas, who declared, "Let the black man get upon his person the brass letters, U.S. Let him get an eagle on his button, and a musket on his shoulders, and bullets in his pocket, and there is no power on earth that can deny that he had earned the right to citizenship." Those words inspired me to take up that musket, to put on that eagle, and to march to make my mama's dream come true, that all slaves would be free. And so I marched, and rode and walked, all the way to New York, where I enlisted in the 31st United States Colored Infantry Regiment. I got that musket, an eagle, and I trained with my brothers from every background. Black men who had been born free, had become free by running away, men who had families, men who had no one, but all men who had come together for a single purpose, so that all slaves would be free. When our training began, it became obvious that our motivation far exceeded our ability, but only at first. We had good sergeants to train us. We were becoming real soldiers, the best. It was during our training that the Emancipation Proclamation was proclaimed. It said that all slaves in the rebel states are and henceforth shall be free. Only problem was, they were the ones we couldn't get to. The ones still being held in bondage. But it did mean that if we could get to them, if we could get back the rebel armies, we could bring freedom with us wherever we went. Well, you can imagine, knowing that we were rearing to get going and get at them. But the Army does move slow. And at first, the Army didn't know what to do with us. Our first duty was guarding wagon trains of supplies and rail lines, building roads, hard work, but hardly fighting, which was all we could think about. For nearly a year, we found ourselves doing this work until, finally, because casualties under General Grant were so high, we finally got put in the line under Cold Harbor in Petersburg. I'll never forget my first battle. I don't know if I was more scared or more angry, but all of us was hollering and firing as fast as we could. But we held our own and pushed rebels back. Mercy, we were proud of ourselves, and with good reason. We thought we were real veterans then, and we were. But nothing prepared us for what came next. Battle of the Crater. Grant had this idea to literally blow a hole in the whole rebel lines by digging under them and putting thousands of pounds of gunpowder underground. Then specially trained soldiers would rush in to drive them back to Regiment. And we, the 31st U.S. Colored Infantry, were to be those special troops. But at the last minute, they decided a white unit would go in first. We were so angry. We felt like we lost our chance to really prove ourselves. We found out afterwards that the generals were afraid. It looked bad if a bunch of Negro troops got slaughtered out front. Like we were being sacrificed. That's not how we felt. We were brave. We wanted to go in. We wanted to get our hands on them. Instead, we were sent in right behind the white troops who hadn't had the special training. And everything went wrong. The white troops had heavy casualties. We did too. The dead and wounded, black and white, we all mingled together in a giant hole. But I learned a lot that day. And I think the white soldiers did too. I think we all learned that the color of our skin don't mean much when you're elbow to elbow fighting to stay alive. Fighting to beat the enemy. Fighting to win. And while some folks always felt different, I think there was a difference in the whole army. And the whole army after that. A feeling that we belonged there. And we were going to hold our row in the same as anybody else. With a newfound spirit, we kept on fighting. Through winter, until the spring, we finally pushed old Lee and Davis out of Richmond. And we marched in. You should have seen that look on their faces as thousands of armed Negro soldiers, their heads held high and their feet in step, marched through the city and kept on marching right through. We didn't want their ruined buildings and empty streets. We wanted Lee and his army. We chased and followed and finally caught him at a place called Appomattox Courthouse. And there he surrendered. Him and the whole rebel army. And I was there to see it. Oh, I wish my mama was there to see it with me too. We've been fighting for nearly 2 years. And for a few days, it felt like the war was really over. But then we was reminded that there was still a whole lot of success further west, and a whole lot more people to bring freedom to. We sailed around to Texas. Lord, I thought Tennessee was hot. But why Texas, you may ask? Because there was a whole lot of success there that hadn't been dealt with. Not many soldiers, mind you. But we still had work that required soldiers. And let me tell you, for many, they considered Lee's surrender the end of the war, and thus the greatest moment for the U.S. But me and my brothers of the 31st saw things differently. We knew the war was not over. It wouldn't be until the shackles were struck off every single man, woman, and child of our race. We landed at Galveston yesterday, and our commanding officer, General Granger, marched us to the center of town. Today, June 19th, 1865, we gathered the population in the square, and an order was read to the last holdouts of the rebellious South. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired laborer. All slaves are free. Never when I was a slave did I imagine that those words would echo throughout the land. And never, as a free man, would I rest until they did. And here I am. Here we are, having fought through a war of blood and sacrifice, to stand upon free soil, that stretches from sea to sea. I hope we always remember this day. The day, as President Lincoln said, our nation experienced a new birth of freedom, a second Independence Day. What will we do with the days to come? What will you do? Only time will tell.